Okay, so you may know that today is China's National Day, the 1st of October. This is the day in 1949 that Chairman Mao declared the People's Republic of China. It's a national holiday, 7 days off for people in the mainland, and I think Hong Kong as well. But of course, in this video, it's Hong Kong that I want to focus on. Um, Things really are escalating there, and it's now actually spread to Taiwan. But first of all, I want to talk a little bit about the situation in Hong Kong as it stands from my perspective. I think both sides are now in a situation where they're not going to back down. Some did speculate that the protesters would just get tired and give up. I think because of what is at stake, that is unlikely to happen, because for these people, it is literally about freedom itself. This is not something about, a trivial thing about, council tax or something that is a temporary political situation. This is about freedom itself. So the protesters are absolutely determined to continue. The problem is, it's hard to conceive the Chinese Communist Party backing down because they never do. They may use some conciliatory language, at least in the Hong Kong side of things, but in essence it is a totalitarian system, and by nature it simply doesn't back down. It doesn't tolerate any dissent. The fact that the protests have been allowed to go on in Hong Kong, or not allowed, but the fact they have been going on in Hong Kong, and that they are as big as they are, is a testament to Hong Kong's relative autonomy. But that is precisely what the regime in Beijing wants to take away. Now, I've noticed a lot of opinions on this subject, and a lot of them are sort of conspiracy theories about this being some sort of Western idea to take over China. My perspective on that is I don't think that is the case, because you need to look at it at pragmatic as opposed to emotional terms. What would the United States or the United Kingdom benefit from having an unstable Hong Kong or an unstable China? That doesn't make any sense. Bear in mind, Britain has billions of pounds worth of trade deals with the People's Republic of China. David Cameron signed huge trade deals with Li Keqiang just a few months ago, so it wouldn't make any sense for us to deliberately stir up unrest. So that conspiracy theory really doesn't have much basis in fact. I did see one guy try to say that one of the main organisers, as he's put it, has links to the CIA. Well, I looked up that guy. I can't remember his name now. It began with J, James something. I can't. Apologies, I can't remember exactly right now. But basically, he's a Hong Kong tycoon, and he's very critical of the CCP. He has been since the Tiananmen protests in '89. But they're saying that is, and by the way, he was born in Guangzhou. But they're saying that is sort of evidence for there being a conspiracy theory. But actually, I looked this up. He is not one of the organisers. He supports the movement, but he's not a central organiser. The central organiser, if he could be described as such, is Benny Tai, who is a professor in a university in Hong Kong, and he initially came up with the concept of Occupy Central. Now, the thing about this is that he's come across, incidentally, as very reasonable in interviews. However, the protesters are taking quite a, I wouldn't say militant, but dramatic approach. They've given CY Leung, the current chief executive of Hong Kong, a deadline of tonight to step down, and they have vowed to escalate protests if he doesn't do that. The other side have vowed to not back down. So this is a very, very tense situation, and it's hard to know what's going to happen. I don't think there's going to be a Tiananmen Square style massacre, because it would just be way too risky for the Communist Party. They know the world is watching. They know that the world is more interconnected than 1989. They know that it would deeply impact Hong Kong's stock market, because Hong Kong today is a much bigger stock market than Beijing was in 1989. So from that point of view, I don't think they would risk that. However, this thing is spreading like wildfire. It's now moved to Taiwan. No doubt that's going to make the Communist Party very nervous. But like I said in a previous video, I really do believe they've brought this on themselves by breaking their promise to allow full universal suffrage and free and fair democratic elections by 2017. That was part of the Sino-British agreement. That was part of the procedures for the 1997 handover. Now they're going back on that. So the protesters have every right to feel angry. I am aware that there are people in Hong Kong who are pro-China. I understand that. And incidentally, today's National Day celebrations went ahead in Hong Kong. There was the flag raising and all the rest of it, just as it done in Beijing. And France 24 carried an interesting segment in comparing the two cities, now in which they were exactly the same in that regard. But I think this is a very tense situation. I don't agree with everything the protesters are doing. So, for example, I'm not sure if it is pragmatic to refuse to have any direct contact with Mr. Leung. I don't know what they would fear from that. I think that's a little bit naive and could be counterproductive, although I support their ideals 100%. I also don't think they'll get wider sympathy from people in Hong Kong or people in China or the international community if they completely shut down Hong Kong. On the other hand, I would put it this way: if they're dealing with a regime that will not back down, that will not offer any compromise, then what other choice do they have? Because it's basically saying, give up your protest and be subservient. That is basically what the Communist Party is saying. Now, if they were saying, look, let's negotiate, let's offer compromise, on condition that you stop this protest, you stop bringing this unrest to Hong Kong, then they might have a point. But they're putting the protesters in an impossible position, because they're saying, we demand that you end the protests, but we're not going to give any ground on your demands. That's ridiculous. Now, the protesters are being headstrong as well, but this is about freedom itself. They know that if this goes ahead in 2017 and Beijing handpicks candidates, Hong Kong is just going to end up like a mainland city. It's going to become utterly subservient to the Communist Party, and eventually, far from being fully democratic as they promise, it will actually be fully subservient. So that is why the stakes are so high. I know there's people on the other side who are pro-Beijing, and I've heard reports, for example, that some of the protesters are not letting them fly Chinese flags and so on. If that is true, I don't agree with it. I mean, you can't fight for democracy and then not let other people have a view. That's ridiculous. And believe me, I support the ideals 100%. But if that is true, it's not fair, and it's just using the same techniques of the Communist Party. It's vital that the movement gets international sympathy. There hasn't been much actual violence from what I have seen, apart from the scuffles and the pepper spray and so on. I'm pleased to say there's been little violence from either side, actual violence. But that doesn't mean there isn't a critical situation going on here. I'm going to wrap this up because I really don't want to lose the connection again. But it's a critical situation.